my wife declared. I'm mortgaging our paid-off home. My high school sweetheart needs capital, assuming you'll cover the payments. I replied, chase your dream. Then I filed for divorce and locked our accounts. Her broker called me 3 hours before the closing. Natalie and I had been married for 8 years. Up until a month ago, if you asked me to describe our life, I would have used the word bulletproof. We lived in Boulder, Colorado, 2 dual income, no kids, with lucrative careers in software architecture. We had 0 debt. 3 years ago, we handed over a final cashier's check for a custom mid-century modern build nestled up against the foothills. I spent 7 years pouring every bonus, every stock vet, and every spare dollar into killing that mortgage so we could coast into our 40 with absolute freedom. That peace evaporated on a Tuesday afternoon. I came home early from the office. The house was quiet. I walked into Natalie's home office to grab a phone charger and saw a thick navy blue leather binder sitting dead center on her mahogany desk. The logo embossed on the front belonged to Alpine First Bank. I opened it, assuming it was promotional material for her wealth management group. It was a finalized application for a $650,000 home equity line of credit. It was drawn against our house, the house I paid off. I read through the heavy cardstock pages, my stomach dropping into my shoes. She was listed as the primary applicant. I was listed as the co-signer. The purpose of the loan was marked as business investment/seed capital. I was still standing there holding it when I heard the garage door open. I walked downstairs and laid the open binder on the kitchen island. Natalie walked in a few minutes later, dropping her gym bag by the door. She saw the binder. She didn't flinch. She didn't drop her gaze. She just walked over to the wine fridge, pulled out a bottle of Pinot Noir, and started pouring a glass. Preston reached out, she said. Her tone was casual, like she was telling me the mail had arrived. Preston was her high school boyfriend, a guy whose entire adult life was a monument to failing upward on other people's dime. He had bankrupted 2 restaurants before he was 30, a disastrous gastropub in Denver, and a food truck that got impounded for unpaid parking tickets. And you have loan documents on our house because, I asked. My voice was steady, but my chest felt incredibly tight. We've been collaborating, she replied, taking a sip of wine. He's a visionary, Ethan. He's launching a decentralized finance platform, a totally new way to handle peer-to-peer crypto lending. He needs seed capital to get the beta off the ground. We have so much equity just sitting there, doing nothing. We can fund his launch. My jaw actually dropped. I couldn't comprehend the words coming out of her mouth. You want to leverage the house I spent 7 years paying off to fund your ex-boyfriend's crypto scam? It's not a scam, she snapped, her eyes narrowing. He'll give us 10% equity. He'll manage the company. He'll do all the heavy lifting. You just cover the monthly payments on the HELOC for the first 2 years until the platform goes public. You make 200 grand a year, Ethan. It's barely a dent in your take-home pay. I stared at the woman I had slept next to for nearly a decade. She was dead serious. You want me to pay a second mortgage so your ex can play Silicon Valley CEO? I asked. She slammed her wine glass down on the quartz counter. You are so incredibly short-sighted. You always have been. You just want to hoard money in boring index funds. Preston is a misunderstood genius. He just needs backing. Our home is an asset. It's our house, our equity, and I am using my half to invest in my future. Natalie, our home is off limits, I said. You aren't risking our roof or his delusions. I am an equal partner in this marriage, she fired back. I genuinely expected you to support me in this. But if you want to be selfish, fine, I'll just secure the line myself. She genuinely expected me to bankroll her rescue mission for a total loser. She thought I was just going to nod, sign my name, and deduct a few $1,000s a month from my paycheck so Preston could buy servers and lease a trendy office. I looked at her, really looked at her. The entitlement was a physical thing in the room with us. Chase your dreams, Natalie, I said. Deadpan. She lit up. The anger vanished, replaced by a radiant, condescending smile. Really? You'll sign the authorization? No, do whatever you want, but I am permanently out. Her smile died. I didn't sleep that night. I moved into the guest room. By Wednesday, the atmosphere in the house was toxic. She was practically manic. I could hear her pacing in her office, taking calls on speakerphone, contacting private lenders, trying to figure out how to secure a massive loan using our shared investment portfolios as collateral since I wouldn't sign the house over. I took Wednesday afternoon off. I drove down to Denver to a family law attorney named Hester. I sat in her sterile, glass-walled conference room and laid out everything. I showed her the photos I'd taken of the Alpine First binder. I showed her the texts Natalie had sent me that morning, furious messages where she explicitly admitted to trying to leverage marital assets for Preston, stating that I was trying to financially abuse her by blocking her investment, but that she would find a way to shoulder all liability herself. Hester read the text, pushed her glasses up her nose, and looked at me. She put that in writing? That she intends to unilaterally encumber joint assets for a third party? Yes, I said. That's a goldmine, Hester said. But we need to move fast. If she manages to collateralize a joint brokerage account before you file, untangling it will cost you tens of thousands in forensic accounting. We start the extraction now. Thursday was quiet. Too quiet. Natalie didn't say a word to me. We passed each other in the kitchen like ghosts. Friday morning at 9:15 a.m., I was sitting at my desk at the office, compiling a data report, when my phone buzzed. It was an email alert from DocuSign. The subject line read, "Signature required. Collateralized loan agreement, Alpine First Bank." I opened it. It was a $300,000 collateral agreement, leveraging our joint Vanguard portfolio. There was a signature block for Natalie, which had already been electronically signed from her IP address. There was a second signature block for me. Before I could even process what I was looking at, a second email hit my inbox. Document completed. Collateralized loan agreement, Alpine First Bank. She had forged it. She routed the document to an alternative email address, clicked my name, and signed it herself. That was the final trigger. I didn't call her. I didn't yell. At 9:45 a.m., I called Hester. Pull the pin, I said. By 10:00 a.m., Hester filed the divorce petition electronically with the county clerk. With the filing came an automatic temporary injunction, a standard legal mechanism in Colorado that immediately freezes all marital assets. Neither party can sell, borrow against, or drain joint accounts once it's filed. I didn't stop there. I logged into my payroll portal and rerouted my direct deposits to a new, individual account I had opened at a completely different bank on Wednesday. I logged into the credit bureaus and locked my social security number down. Then I called Vanguard and informed them that a fraudulent signature had been submitted on a loan document tied to our joint account and that a divorce filing was active. They froze the account instantly. 3 hours before her fraudulent loan was scheduled to wire, my phone rang. It was Jack. Jasper, the wealth manager who oversaw Natalie's family trust and our joint investments. He was in a panic. I could hear papers shuffling and heavy breathing on his end. Ethan, what the hell is happening? Jasper sputtered. The Vanguard accounts are locked. The portal is showing a hard freeze. Natalie is standing in my lobby screaming at my receptionist, and Alpine First is calling me asking why the collateral verification just bounced. I filed for divorce, Jasper, I replied calmly. I assumed Natalie mentioned it. Divorce? Ethan, she's in the middle of a massive funding round, he yelled. You froze her liquidity while she's trying to close a deal. Do you know what kind of liability you're opening yourself up to? She's threatening to sue me. The decision was finalized the moment she tried to fraudulently sign away my assets to her ex-boyfriend, I said. I was leaning back in my desk chair, watching the traffic on the highway outside my office window. This is standard asset protection. Would you like copies of the forged DocuSign log? I can send over the IP routing data that proves she signed my name from her laptop. Silence, the kind of silence that means a man's career just flashed before his eyes. No, Jasper stammered. I need to go. The line went dead. I stayed at a hotel that night. I ignored 24 missed calls from Natalie, 6 from Preston, and a barrage of unhinged text messages. Saturday night was the annual Boulder Children's Hospital charity gala. Natalie and I had bought a table months ago. It was a major networking event for her, and she had spent $2,000 on a dress for it. I figured she wouldn't show, given the absolute meltdown of her financial life. I was wrong. I arrived alone, wearing a tailored suit, and stood near the silent auction tables with a bourbon. 30 minutes later, I saw them. Preston dropped her off at the valet in a leased BMW 5 Series. He parked it and walked in beside her, wearing a tuxedo that didn't fit him right in the shoulders. Natalie looked feral. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were wild. She scanned the ballroom, locked onto me, and marched straight through a group of pediatric surgeons to get to me. She grabbed my arm, her nails dug into my jacket sleeve. We are talking right now, she hissed. She dragged me toward the coat room in the hallway outside the main ballroom. I let her. I wanted to hear it. The second the heavy wooden doors closed behind us, she erupted. My loan was denied. My cards are declining. She screamed, not caring who heard her through the wood. The Vanguard account is frozen. Jasper dropped me as a client. How am I supposed to fund the startup? We were supposed to wire the money on Monday. Use Preston's money, I replied, taking a slow sip of my bourbon. Oh wait, he doesn't have any. The door swung open. Preston and Natalie's older sister, Sable, barged in. Sable looked horrified. Preston just looked aggressive. He puffed out his chest and stepped between me and Natalie. Look man, I know this is unorthodox, Preston said, using his best imitation of a commanding CEO voice, but you're stifling innovation. We are on the verge of disrupting a multi-billion-dollar sector. You locking her out of her own money is petty. It's small. Preston, shut up, I interrupted. My voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. You couldn't afford her 10 years ago, and you can't afford your own life now. You convinced her to blow up her entire marriage to fund your imaginary company. You don't have a platform. You have a pitch deck and a leased car. I'm an entrepreneur, he shouted, his face flushing red. You're just a corporate drone. Then go bootstrap it, I said. I looked at Natalie. She was breathing heavily, staring at me with pure hatred. You can have her, but you're paying for her now. Good luck at the valet. Her Amex is dead. I walked out of the coat room, leaving the three of them standing there in the dim light of the hanging winter coats. I felt lighter than I had in years. I drove back to my hotel, ordered room service, and slept for 9 hours straight. I thought the worst of it was over. I thought the injunction had walled me off from the blast radius. Monday morning at 8 o'clock a.m., my phone rang. It was Hester. Ethan, she said. She didn't use her normal brisk professional greeting. Her voice was tight. Are you sitting down? I'm at my desk, I said, putting my coffee down. What's wrong? Did she try to breach the house? No, Hester said. We got the preliminary financial disclosures back from the Discovery Suite. The freeze worked on the big account. But Ethan, she didn't just start this last week. Start what? The funding, Hester said. I could hear her flipping through pages. I'm looking at a shadow credit profile. Natalie opened 3 high-yield credit cards in your name 5 months ago. She leveraged your excellent credit score. They're maxed out. Cash advances, mostly, totaling about $60,000. The air left my lungs. She forged my signature on credit applications? Yes, Hester said quietly. And it gets worse. Those cash advances, they were wired to an LLC registered in Delaware. I pulled the corporate registry this morning. I closed my eyes. It's Preston's company. No, Hester corrected. Preston is the registered agent, but the LLC is completely owned by Natalie. She didn't just invest in his company, Ethan. She is the company. And because she started funding it with marital assets while you were married, the debt belongs to the marital estate. Preston is just an employee. If this company collapses, he walks away clean. You and Natalie are on the hook for everything. I stared at the dual monitors on my desk, the lines of data I had been compiling blurring into a meaningless gray smudge. The low hum of the office fax suddenly sounded deafening. A Delaware LLC, I said, my voice sounding completely hollow, even to me. She set it up in her name. Yes, Hester said. Her tone was clinical now, slipping into the pragmatic gear she used for damage control. And because of when it was incorporated, and the fact that it was funded with marital funds, even if those funds were obtained via fraudulent cash advances on cards with your name on them, it is considered a marital liability. Colorado is an equitable distribution state. Debt acquired during the marriage is split, regardless of whose name is on the ledger, unless we can prove egregious financial dissipation, which she committed, I said. She forged my signature. On the home equity line and the collateral agreement, yes, which we stopped. Hester corrected. The credit cards are trickier. She applied for them online. She knew your social security number, your gross income, your mother's maiden name. The credit card companies don't care if you were in the room when she clicked submit. They see a married couple, they see a joint household, and they see $60,000 in cash advances that were funneled directly into an LLC that she owns 100% of. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes. So, what's the play? How do I amputate this? We file an emergency motion for a forensic accounting of the LLC, Hester said instantly. We need to know exactly where every dollar of that 60 grand went. We need to freeze the corporate accounts if she hasn't already drained them. And we are going to petition the judge to assign the entirety of this specific debt strictly to her column of the asset sheet during the final division, citing fraud and breach of fiduciary duty to the marital estate. Will a judge agree to that? Hester paused. Depends on the judge. Depends on how good her lawyer is. And she retained a shark, Ethan. She hired Arlo Trask. He specializes in high net worth tech divorces. He is going to try to argue that you were implicitly aware aware of her business ventures and that you're only crying foul now because the marriage broke down. I have the texts, I reminded her. The ones from last Wednesday where she explicitly admits to going behind my back. Those are our silver bullets, Hester agreed. Keep them backed up in 3 different places. Do not engage with her. Do not speak to Preston. Do not answer calls from numbers you don't know. Trask will try to bait you into saying something on a recorded line that implies you knew about the LLC. I hung up the phone. I didn't go back to the data report. I sat in my office chair for an hour, watching the traffic on Highway 36, realizing that the bulletproof life I had spent a decade building was currently bleeding out from a dozen different stab wounds I hadn't even known were there. I checked out of the hotel that afternoon. I found a furnished corporate rental, a sterile, gray-on-gray, 1-bedroom apartment in a complex near the outdoor mall. I signed a 6-month lease, paid in full upfront from the secure account I had opened, and drove to Target to buy towels, a toothbrush, and a coffee maker. It felt surreal. A week ago, I was choosing custom landscaping options for a $1 million mid-century home. Now I was standing in aisle 14, comparing the thread counts of bath mat. The silence of the apartment that first night was heavy. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of my house. It was the suffocating quiet of isolation. I ordered Thai takeout, sat on the stiff gray sofa, and watched my phone screen light up with notifications I refused to answer. Natalie wasn't just trying to reach me anymore. She was deploying proxies. The first was Sable, her sister, who left a rambling, tearful voicemail accusing me of leaving Natalie destitute and begging me to just unlock the Vanguard account so she can pay her grocery bill. I deleted it. I knew for a fact Natalie had her own separate checking account with at least 15 grand in it from her last quarterly bonus. She wasn't starving. She was just locked out of the war chest. The second proxy was a mutual friend, Imogen. Imogen and her husband had been our go-to-dinner party couple for 5 years. Imogen sent a long, carefully worded text message on Wednesday afternoon asking if I was willing to sit down for a coffee. Ethan, we're all so shocked, the text read. Natalie is a wreck. She says you've cut off all her access and are trying to financially ruin her over a misunderstanding about a business loan. I know things are heated, but maybe a neutral mediator could help. I'd love to just hear your side. I stared at the message. A misunderstanding. That was the narrative Arlo Trask had instructed her to spin. Minimize the fraud, frame me as the controlling, financially abusive husband withholding resources, and turn our social circle into a pressure cooker. I typed out a response to Imogen. There is no misunderstanding. Imogen, Natalie committed financial fraud and forged my signature on multiple bank documents to fund her ex-boyfriend. My lawyer is handling the asset division. I appreciate your concern, but I am not discussing ongoing litigation. I hit send. 5 minutes later, Imogen replied, wow, I didn't realize you were going to be this vindictive. She's your wife. I blocked Imogen's number. It stung, but the clarity was immediate. The social fallout was going to be total. Natalie was highly charismatic, deeply ingrained in the local tech community, and possessed an uncanny ability to play the victim when cornered. I was the quiet, numbers-driven architect who stayed in the background. The court of public opinion in Boulder was going to convict me before the week was out. I didn't care. Public opinion didn't pay commercial debt. 2 weeks later, we had our first status conference. Because of the court backlog, it was handled via a secure Zoom call rather than in person. I took the morning off and set up my laptop at the small glass dining table in my rental apartment. Hester logged in from her office in Denver. At 9:00 a.m., the screen populated. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Vesper, appeared in the main box. Then, Arlo Trask, a slick-looking man in his 50s wearing a pinstripe suit, logged in. A moment later, Natalie's video feed clicked on. She was sitting in what looked like the study of Sable's house. She was dressed down, a simple, oversized beige sweater, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a messy clip. It was a calculated departure from her usual tailored, high-power aesthetic. She looked exhausted. She looked frail. She didn't look at the camera. She kept her eyes downcast, staring at her hands folded on the desk in front of her. All right, let's get into it, Judge Vesper said, not wasting time with pleasantries. We have a temporary injunction in place. I see a motion from the respondent, Miss Hensley, to lift the freeze on the joint Vanguard brokerage account, citing lack of living expenses and the need to pay legal retainers. Your Honor, Arlo Trask began, his voice smooth and deeply sympathetic. My client has been completely financially frozen by her husband. Mr. Hensley unilaterally locked her out of their shared wealth management portal and rerouted his income, leaving her unable to even service the mortgage on their marital home or maintain her basic standard of living. Miss Hensley earns $160,000 a year in base salary. Hester cut in sharply. She has her own individual checking account at Wells Fargo, which our discovery shows currently holds over $14,000. She is not destitute. She is attempting to access the Vanguard portfolio to finalize a collateralized loan that she previously attempted to execute by forging my client's signature. Judge Vesper's eyebrows went up. She looked at Trask. Is there a police report regarding the forgery? We are preparing to file it, Hester said. But more pressingly, Your Honor, we filed an emergency motion for a forensic accounting of a Delaware LLC solely owned by Miss Hensley, funded entirely by $60,000 in covert cash advances taken out on credit cards fraudulently opened in my client's name. Trask sighed, leaning back in his leather chair, performing an exasperated shake of his head. Your Honor, this is a classic tactic. My client is an ambitious woman in the tech sector. She and Mr. Hensley discussed this venture for months. He is now retroactively claiming fraud because he is unhappy the marriage is dissolving. The LLC was a joint endeavor. If it was a joint endeavor, why is Mr. Hensley not listed on the corporate registry? Hester fired back. Why is the registered agent her high school ex-boyfriend, who contributed zero capital? We demand a full accounting of the LLC's liability. We have reason to believe the debt extends beyond the credit cards. Natalie looked up at the camera for the first time. Her eyes met mine on the screen. There was no frailty there. There was a cold, hard panic. Judge Vesper frowned. She shuffled some papers on her desk. Mr. Trask, does this LLC have outstanding liabilities beyond the $60,000 mentioned by opposing counsel? Trask cleared his throat. The slickness faltered for a fraction of a second. Your Honor, the company is in its startup phase. There are standard operational overheads. Answer the question, counselor. Vesper snapped. What are the liabilities? Trask looked off camera, presumably at some notes. The LLC recently entered into a commercial lease agreement for office space in downtown Boulder. Hester froze. I felt the air leave my lungs. Downtown Boulder commercial real estate was some of the most expensive in the state. A lease, Hester said, her voice dangerously quiet. For how long? And at what monthly rate? It's a 3-year lease, Trask mumbled, the bravado completely gone. At $12,000 a month, with a personal guarantee attached. Silence fell over the Zoom call. The math hit me like a physical blow. $12,000 a month, 3 years, $432,000 in lease obligations for a company that didn't actually produce anything, didn't have a product, and whose only employee was Preston, a man who was currently driving around in a leased BMW while Natalie footed the bill. And who signed the personal guarantee? Judge Vesper asked, her tone deadly flat. My client did, Trask admitted. So, to summarize, Judge Vesper said, leaning into her camera, your client, Ms. Hensley, secretly leveraged $60,000 in cash advances to fund an LLC, then signed a personal guarantee on a $500,000 commercial lease, effectively tying the marital estate to an anchor. And now she wants me to unfreeze the marital brokerage account? She needs liquidity to service the lease, Your Honor, Trask argued weakly. If the LC defaults, the landlord will come after the marital assets anyway. It was a hostage situation. She had strapped a bomb to our shared finances, and now she was demanding I hand over the detonator so she could keep Preston's fantasy alive just a little bit longer. Motion to lift the freeze on the Vanguard account is firmly denied, Judge Vesper said. She didn't even blink. I am granting Miss Hester's motion for a full forensic accounting of the LLC. Furthermore, I am ordering Ms. Hensley to produce the commercial lease agreement to opposing counsel by end of business today. If I find out she has taken on one more dime of debt without court approval, I will hold her in contempt. Are we clear? Yes, Your Honor, Trask said, his jaw tight. Natalie's video feed abruptly cut out, leaving a black square with her name in white text. The call ended. I closed my laptop. My hands were shaking. $500,000. She had committed us to $500,000 in commercial real estate debt for Preston. The house I had spent 7 years paying off was worth roughly $800,000. If the landlord came after the personal guarantee, they could place a lien on the house. She had found a way to leverage the property even without my signature on the HELOC. My phone rang. It was Hester. We need to break that lease, I said, before she could even say hello. We need to get out of it. I know, Hester said. I'm already drafting a subpoena for the landlord. We need to see the exact language of the personal guarantee. But Ethan, you need to brace yourself. Commercial leases are ironclad. If she signed a pure, unconditional personal guarantee, the landlord has absolutely no incentive to let her out of it. They don't care about your divorce. They just want their $12,000 a month. So what do? We squeeze, Hester said grimly. We find Preston. Finding Preston didn't require a private investigator. He wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was busy playing Steve Jobs on Pearl Street. Hester forwarded me the address of the commercial space an hour after the Zoom call ended. Trask had coughed up the lease agreement to avoid a contempt charge. I pulled it open on my phone. The address was right in the middle of downtown Boulder's most expensive pedestrian mall. I took an early lunch, walked the 4 blocks from my corporate rental to Pearl Street, and found the address. It was a ground floor corner unit with massive floor-to-ceiling windows. I stood on the brick sidewalk and looked inside. The place was a monument to unearned arrogance. There were 6 Herman Miller Aron chairs, a custom reclaimed wood conference table, and a row of brand new MacBooks sitting on minimalist standing desks. An espresso machine that cost more than my first car sat gleaming on a kitchenette counter, all of it paid for by my credit score. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open. The chime echoed in the cavernous, exposed brick space. Preston was standing near the whiteboard, gesturing emphatically with a dry erase marker. 2 guys in their early 20s, probably local college students working for Equity, were sitting at the desk, looking confused. Preston froze when he saw me. He was wearing a black turtleneck. I almost laughed out loud. We're in a closed-door sprint right now, Ethan, Preston said, dropping his arm. He tried to sound authoritative in front of his team, but his voice cracked slightly. The door was unlocked, I said, stepping fully into the room. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at the chairs, the computers, the espresso machine. Nice setup. Looks expensive. It's an investment in the infrastructure of the platform, Preston said. He puffed out his chest, walking toward me to physically block my view of the young developers. Look, you need to leave. I can have you trespass. This is a private corporate office. Who's paying the rent, Preston? I asked. The company is fully capitalized, he said. The buzzwords fell out of his mouth like a script. The rent is $12,000 a month, I said, projecting my voice just enough so the 2 kids in the back could hear every word. And the only capitalization this company has is $60,000 in credit card cash advances that Natalie forged my name to get. Money that's already gone. I gestured to the Herman Miller chairs. Enjoy the espresso, guys, because this place is going dark in about 2 weeks. The 2 developers exchanged nervous glances. Preston flushed a deep, mottled red. You don't know what you're talking about. We have Series A funding lined up. We have angel investors. Natalie's Vanguard account is frozen by a federal judge. Preston, I cut him off. She has zero access to it. Her individual checking has about $14,000. After she pays her lawyer, she's broke. The Amex is dead. The spigot is turned off. I watched his eyes. He didn't know. Natalie hadn't told him just how complete the freeze was. She was probably terrified he would leave if he knew the money was gone. She'd been stringing him along, hoping the judge would lift the injunction. That's a lie, Preston stammered, but the panic in his voice was real. Call her, I said. Ask her about Judge Vesper's ruling this morning. Ask her how she's paying the lease on the 1st of the month, because if she defaults, the landlord comes after the personal guarantee she signed, which means he comes after her half of the marital estate. You aren't a CEO, Preston. You're a liability. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. By the time I got back to my apartment and logged into work, my phone was blowing up. 7 missed calls from Natalie, 3 from Sable. I ignored all of them. I called Hester instead. I found him, I said, and I planted the seed. He didn't know the accounts were hard locked by the court. He thought she was going to write a check for the rent next week. Good, Hester said. Let them cannibalize each other. But we have a bigger problem, Ethan. I just finished reading the fine print on the commercial lease Trask sent over. It's worse than I thought. I rubbed my temples. How much worse? It's not just a standard personal guarantee, she said. The landlord is Bowen Commercial Management. They are notorious in Boulder. They included an acceleration clause. If the tenant defaults on a single month's rent within the first year, the entire 3-year balance becomes immediately due and payable. All $432,000. I stopped breathing for a second. And because she signed it while we were married, it's an active threat to the marital estate, Hester confirmed. If she misses next month's rent, Bowen will accelerate the lease. They will file a judgment against her for the $500,000, and because she's technically half owner of your paid-off house, they will place a lien on the property. We won't be able to sell it, divide it, or touch it until Bowen gets paid. She doesn't have 12 grand to pay the rent, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. She's going to default. We both know it, unless she finds the money somewhere else, Hester said. Keep your guard up, Ethan. A desperate person with a $500,000 anvil hanging over their head is going to try to find a parachute. I didn't have to wait long to find out what that parachute looked like. Thursday morning, 2 days later, I was in the middle of a massive database migration at work. My desk phone rang. It was an internal extension. I picked it up. Ethan Hensley, I said. Ethan, it's Stellan, the voice said. Stellan was the director of human resources for our North American division. Do you have a few minutes? I need you to come down to my office. My stomach tightened. Stellan didn't make casual phone calls. I locked my computer and took the elevator down to the 4th floor. Stellan's office was at the end of the hall, overlooking the mountains. He was sitting behind his desk, looking deeply uncomfortable. Shut the door, please, Stellan said. I did, taking the chair opposite him. I'm going to keep this as professional as possible. Ethan, Stellan started, folding his hands on his desk. But we received a highly concerning phone call this morning on the company's ethics hotline, and shortly after, an email to the executive board. From who? I asked, though I already knew the answer. From your wife, Natalie. Stellan cleared his throat, picking up a printed sheet of paper. She claims that you have been utilizing company servers and proprietary algorithms to manage an off-the-books crypto trading platform. She stated that you've been doing this during business hours, effectively stealing company time and resources to hide assets from her during an ongoing divorce proceeding. I stared at him. The sheer audacity of it was paralyzing. She was taking Preston's fake business model and superimposing it onto me to get me fired. She also requested, Stellan continued, his voice dropping slightly, that your upcoming quarterly bonus and any unvested stock options be immediately frozen and redirected to a court-appointed escrow account, citing financial abuse. Stellan, I said, keeping my voice dead level. I am going through a high-conflict divorce. My wife forged my signature on a massive loan document to fund a startup for her ex-boyfriend. She was caught. Our assets were frozen by a judge, and now she is backed into a corner with a commercial lease she can't pay. This is a retaliatory strike. There is no crypto platform. I build back-end architecture for our healthcare clients. You can audit my servers right now. Stellan sighed, rubbing his forehead. I know your work, Ethan. You've been here 6 years. Your record is flawless. I don't personally believe you're running a shadow exchange on our network, but HR policy dictates that any claim of misappropriating company servers requires an automatic, immediate suspension of network privileges pending an internal IT audit. You're locking me out of the system, I said. I have to, Stellan said, looking genuinely apologetic. It's paid administrative leave. 2 weeks, maybe 3, while they comb through your data log. I know it's a nightmare timing-wise, but my hands are tied. And as for the bonus, legal advised us to hold it until we see a signed order from a judge clarifying the asset freeze. We don't want to get dragged into the middle of a marital dispute. She had found her parachute, or, more accurately, she had decided to cut my ripcord. If she couldn't have my income to pay her debts, she was going to make sure I didn't have it either. I nodded slowly. I understand, Stellan. Do what you have to do. I walked back to my desk, packed my laptop into my bag, and handed my security badge to my department head. The walk to my car felt like moving underwater. I sat in the driver's seat of my car in the parking garage and called Hester. She just nuked my job, I said when she answered. I explained the HR meeting, the allegations, the suspension. Hester was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was razor sharp. She's escalating. She thinks if she squeezes your primary income, you'll cave and agree to lift the injunction on the Vanguard account just to make the pain stop. It's not going to stop, I said, staring at the concrete wall of the garage. She needs 12 grand by the 1st of the month. She's going to bleed me dry. No, she isn't, Hester said, because now she's crossed a line that Arlo Trask can't defend. Calling your employer with false allegations of corporate theft isn't just petty revenge in a divorce. It's tortious interference with your employment. It's defamation. Can we prove she's lying? The IT audit will prove you aren't running a crypto platform, Hester said, but we are going on the offensive immediately. I'm filing a motion for sanctions against her. And Ethan, it's time to stop playing defense with the house. If she defaults on that lease, Bowen Commercial is coming for the property. We need to liquidate it before they can attach a lien. Liquidate the house? I asked, my chest tightening. The house I spent 7 years paying off? It's an anchor now, Hester said bluntly. We petitioned the court to force an emergency sale of the marital home, citing her reckless accumulation of debt. We move the proceeds into a secure court registry where neither of you can touch it. If Bowen tries to come after her later, they get nothing but her half of the cash. Your half stays protected. We sell it. The mid-century modern built against the foothills, the custom kitchen, the deck where I thought I'd drink coffee in my 60s. Do it, I said. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal filings. Hester filed the motion for the emergency sale and slapped Natalie with a demand for sanctions regarding the defamation at my job. Friday night, I was sitting on the gray sofa in my apartment, watching a meaningless baseball game on mute when my doorbell rang. I didn't move. I lived in a secure building. Nobody got past the lobby without buzzing up. The bell rang again, then a hard, frantic knocking. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Sable, Natalie's sister. I unlocked the door and pulled it open just a few inches, keeping the security chain engaged. How did you get in here, Sable? Someone was walking out of the lobby, she said. Her face was pale, and she was clutching her purse with white-knuckled hands. She didn't have the righteous, accusatory energy from her voicemails. She just looked terrified. I'm not talking to you, I said, starting to close the door. Anything you want to say goes through Hester. Wait. She wedged her foot into the gap. Ethan, please, you have to listen to me. I didn't know. I stopped. Didn't know what? About the credit cards, Sable said, her voice shaking. About the cash advances. Natalie told me you were just being controlling and hiding the joint money. I believed her. But yesterday, she swallowed hard. Yesterday, she asked me to co-sign a loan for her. A personal loan for $20,000. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her. And what did you say? I said no. I told her I couldn't afford that kind of risk. My husband would kill me. Sable looked down at her shoes, a tear spilling over her lashes. Ethan, she went into my purse when I was in the bathroom. She took pictures of my driver's license and my social security card. My husband caught her doing it. A cold chill washed over me. She wasn't just desperate anymore. She was predatory. She was cannibalizing her own family to feed Preston's delusion. She's sick, Ethan, Sable whispered. She's completely lost her mind. And Preston isn't who he says he is. I know he's a loser, I said. No, you don't understand, Sable said, looking up at me, her eyes wide with a fear I hadn't seen before. My husband ran a background check on him after we caught her with my ID. The crypto platform? It's not a startup. It's not a real company. We know it's a scam, Sable, I said patiently. It's a vanity project. Ethan, Sable's voice cracked. Preston has a gambling addiction, a massive one. My husband found the court records from Nevada. He owes hundreds of thousands to sports books. The office space, the computers, that's just a front, so Natalie thinks he's working. The $60,000 she gave him from your credit card, he didn't use it for servers. He wired it to offshore betting accounts. I stood there, staring at Sable's tear-streaked face in the hallway. The words hung in the narrow space between the doorframe and the security chain. Offshore betting accounts. Nevada sportsbook. It made perfect, sickening sense. It explained the unearned confidence. It explained the erratic behavior. It explained why Preston needed seed capital for a decentralized finance platform that didn't have a single line of code written. He wasn't building a company. He was feeding a sickness, and he had found the perfect host in Natalie's ego. I unhooked the chain and pulled the door open. Come in. Sable practically collapsed onto the gray sofa. She dropped her purse on the floor and buried her face in her hands, taking shaky, ragged breath. I went to the kitchenette, poured a glass of water, and set it on the coffee table in front of her. Drink, I said, and then tell me exactly what Dorian found. Dorian was Sable's husband. He was a forensic accountant for a mid-sized auditing firm in Denver. If there was anyone who knew how to dig through financial dirt, it was him. Sable picked up the glass with trembling hands. After I caught her taking pictures of my ID, I freaked out. I told Dorian everything. The loan she wanted, the Vanguard freeze, the startup. He thought it sounded wrong. Tech startups looking for seed capital don't usually require the founder's girlfriend to commit identity theft on her sister to make payroll. So he ran Preston. And Preston has 2 active judgments against him in Clark County, Nevada, Sable said, her voice dropping, totaling over $280,000. Unpaid markers at 2 major casinos, and Dorian traced the IP routing on the Delaware LLC registry. It's a shell. The $60,000 she pulled from your credit cards went into the LLC's operating account, sat there for 3 days, and was then wired in 4 separate tranches to an offshore sports betting syndicate based in Costa Rica. I sat in the armchair opposite her. The sheer scale of the deception was almost hard to process. Does Natalie know? Sable shook her head. I don't think so. I really don't. She still talks about the platform going public. She still talks about the beta launch. She thinks the money went to server arrays and offshore developers. Preston sold her a dream, and she bought it so hard she was willing to burn her entire life down to fund it. She didn't just burn her life down, Sable, I said, my voice hardening. She burned mine. She tried to leverage my house. She forged my signature. She called my employer yesterday and falsely accused me of running a crypto exchange on their network. I am currently on unpaid administrative leave, pending a federal level audit. Sable gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God. Ethan, I didn't know. She's a liability to everyone around her, I said. Which brings me to my next question. If the $60,000 went to Costa Rica, how did they pay the deposit on the commercial lease? Bowen Commercial requires first, last, and security on a $12,000 a month space. That's $36,000 just to get the keys. Where did she get it? Sable looked away. Fresh tears welled in her eyes. She stared at the blank television screen. Sable, where did she get the deposit? From Mom, she whispered. My stomach completely bottomed out. Blythe, Natalie and Sable's mother, was a 71-year-old retired middle school teacher living on a fixed pension and a modest IRA in Fort Collins. She was sweet, trusting, and fundamentally incapable of telling Natalie no. She told Mom it was a bridge loan. Sable choked out. She said the Vanguard account was frozen because of a banking error, and she just needed the cash for 30 days to secure the office space before they lost it. Mom withdrew $40,000 from her retirement account. She took the early withdrawal penalty. She wired it directly to Preston. I closed my eyes. The blast radius just kept expanding. Natalie hadn't just strapped a bomb to our marriage. She was systematically detonating the financial stability of her entire family. You need to leave, I said softly, standing up. Sable looked up, startled. Ethan, please, I don't know what to do. If Dorian finds out she took Mom's money, I can't help you, Sable, I said, pointing to the door. I am locked in a legal cage match with a woman who is actively trying to ruin me. I cannot take on your mother's stolen retirement. I cannot take on your husband's anger. You need to go home, tell Dorian everything, and figure out how to protect yourself from your sister. She stood up, picking up her purse. She looked small, defeated. What are you going to do? I'm going to finish the extraction, I said. I locked the door behind her. I didn't go back to the couch. I walked straight to my laptop, opened it, and typed out an email to Hester. I detailed everything Sable had just told me. The judgments in Nevada, the offshore wires to Costa Rica, the $40,000 drained from Blythe's retirement. Hester called me at 7:00 a.m. on Saturday morning. I verified the Nevada judgment, she said. No greeting, just straight to business. Their public record in Clark County, Preston is radioactive, and the offshore wires constitute a gross dissipation of marital assets. The judge is going to crucify her. What about the lease? I asked, watching the sun come up over the parking lot outside my window. If they used Blythe's money for the deposit, the landlord doesn't care. They still have the personal guarantee, and rent is due in 5 days. That's where the leverage flips, Hester said. Her voice had a sharp, predatory edge to it. I just got off the phone with Arlo Trask. I didn't tell him about the gambling yet. I just told him, we are filing the motion for the emergency sale of the house on Monday morning, and I told him about the HR complaint Natalie filed at your job. How did he react? He panicked, Hester said. Trask is a shark, but he operates on the assumption that his clients are telling him the truth. Natalie told him the HR complaint was a legitimate whistleblower action. I informed him that our IT audit is going to clear you completely, at which point we will be filing a civil suit for defamation and tortious interference against her, and we will be naming his firm in the discovery. You threatened her lawyer? I reminded him of his ethical obligations. Hester corrected smoothly. Trask doesn't want to get dragged before the ethics board because his client is a compulsive liar. He knows he's losing control of her. So, I offered him a deal. I poured a cup of coffee. What deal? We agree to pause the emergency sale of the house. In exchange, Natalie agrees to a stipulated order assigning the entirety of the $60,000 credit card debt to her side of the ledger immediately, and she formally retracts the HR complaint in writing to your employer, citing a misunderstanding of technical data by noon on Monday. Monday. I took a sip of the black coffee. It tasted like ash. And the commercial lease? That stays strictly on her, Hester said. Trask knows they can't fight the credit card debt anymore. Not with the fraud evidence we have. He's trying to stop the bleeding. If she retracts the HR complaint, you get your job back. You get your bonus. And you are walled off from the credit cards. Will she sign it? Trask is going to force her to, Hester said. Or he's going to drop her as a client. And if he drops her, she has to explain to a judge why she's suddenly unrepresented while sitting on $500,000 of liability. Monday morning at 11:45 a.m., my inbox pinged. It was an email from Stellan in HR. Attached was a scanned PDF of a formal letter signed by Natalie. It was a complete retraction. She stated that her previous claims regarding my use of company servers were inaccurate and based on her own lack of technical understanding. Stellan's email was brief. Ethan, the audit cleared. Your suspension is lifted, effective immediately. Your bonus will process on Friday. We expect you back in the office tomorrow. I forwarded the email to Hester. 10 minutes later, she sent me a copy of the stipulated court order signed by a judge, permanently assigning the $60,000 in credit card debt solely to Natalie. I had my income back. I was insulated from the initial fraud, but the commercial lease was still ticking. Thursday was the first of the month. I went back to the office on Tuesday. The atmosphere was incredibly strained. My coworkers didn't look me in the eye. When you get escorted out pending a federal ID audit, people assume the worst. The retraction cleared my name legally, but the social damage was done. I kept my head down, ate lunch at my desk, and focused on writing code. Thursday arrived. I checked the joint checking account that we had left open solely to service the mortgage on the house. The balance was exactly enough for the mortgage payment, nothing more. Natalie didn't have $12,000. Preston certainly didn't have it. At 3 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again. Same number. I picked it up. Hello, Ethan. It was Preston. His voice sounded thin, frantic. The manufactured tech bro bravado was completely gone. How did you get this number? I asked. Natalie's phone. Look, don't hang up, he said, speaking so fast the words blurred together. I need your help. She's losing it. She's completely losing it. Preston, do not ever call me again. No, wait. You don't understand. He shouted into the receiver. The landlord locked the doors. Bowen Commercial. They changed the electronic codes on the office this morning because the rent didn't clear. The computers are inside. Everything is inside. I leaned back in my office chair. The acceleration clause. They hadn't just missed the payment. Bowen had executed the default. Sounds like a structural issue with your funding model, I said. Bootstrapping is tough. Ethan, please. Preston begged, his voice cracking. She found out about the offshore wires. The bank statements came in the mail to her sister's house, and Sable gave them to her. She knows about the sports books. I stopped breathing for a second. The collision had finally happened. Where is she? I asked. She's outside the office, Preston said. I could hear traffic in the background. She's got a tire iron, Ethan. She's trying to smash the glass on the storefront. She's screaming that I stole her mother's money. The cops are coming. You have to come down here. You're the only one she listens to when she gets like this. You're wrong, Preston, I said, my voice ice cold. She doesn't listen to me. She never did. That's why you're standing on the sidewalk watching a $500,000 liability have a nervous breakdown. Ethan, I hung up. I blocked the number. I didn't leave the office. I sat at my desk and watched the clock tick down to 5 p.m. I packed my bag, walked to my car, and drove back to my corporate rental. When I unlocked my door, the apartment was exactly as quiet and gray as I had left it. I put my keys on the counter. I opened a beer. I stood by the window and watched the traffic on the highway. At 6:30 p.m., Hester called. Did you see the local news? She asked. No, go online. Look at the Boulder Police Department's daily blotter. I pulled up the website on my phone. There it was, right near the top of the feed. Disturbance 1400 block of Pearl Street. Adult female apprehended after causing approximately $8,000 in property damage to a commercial storefront. Suspect utilized a metal tool to shatter 2 custom plate glass windows. Transported to county holding pending charges of criminal mischief and destruction of property. She smashed the windows, I said. She didn't just smash the windows, Hester corrected. Because the property belongs to Bowen Commercial and she is the leaseholder, they aren't just pressing criminal charges. They executed the acceleration clause an hour ago. Trask called me. They are coming after her for the full $432,000 plus the damages. And the house? That's why I'm calling, Hester said, her tone dropping the professional detachment for just a second. Trask isn't fighting the emergency sale anymore. He can't. He has to liquidate the house to keep her out of a civil trial with Bowen. We're listing the property tomorrow morning. And Ethan? Yeah, she's out on bail. Sable posted it. But Preston is gone. He cleared out his leased apartment this afternoon and disappeared. Let him run, I told Hester. He won't get far on a maxed out credit card. We listed the house on Monday morning. It felt like a surgical amputation. 7 years of overtime, bonuses, and careful planning boxed up into a rented U-Haul in a single weekend. But Hester was right. The house had become an anchor, and we had to cut the chain. We priced it for a cash sale, and it went under contract in 3 days. We closed right under Bowen Commercial's nose. The funds bypassed us entirely, dropping straight into a secure court registry. Natalie couldn't touch a dime of it, and Bowen couldn't attach a lien to a property we no longer owned. The divorce dragged on for 5 grueling months. Judge Vesper was merciless in her final ruling. The math was simple, but the execution was a bloodbath for Natalie. The court took the proceeds from the house, factored in the $60,000 in credit card debt and the $40,000 stolen from Blythe, and carved it directly out of Natalie's half of the marital estate. When the dust settled, she walked away with exactly $145,000. That was her legal share. That was her finite cash pile. It wasn't going to last. She owed Arlo Trask a small fortune in legal fees. She was facing criminal mischief charges for the property damage on Pearl Street, and Bowen Commercial was relentlessly pursuing a civil judgment for the broken lease. That money was practically vapor before the ink dried on the decree. Preston's fake crypto platform collapsed exactly 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. Once the money train was permanently derailed and Natalie had nothing left to offer, he vanished. He stopped answering her calls. He blocked Sable. He ghosted completely. But you can't ghost the federal government. 2 months later, Preston was indicted by the SEC for wire fraud and illegal offshore gambling operation. They found him living in a cheap extended stay motel just outside of Reno. Preston wasn't a mastermind, and he certainly wasn't loyal. The second the federal agents sat him down in an interrogation room, he folded. In a desperate bid for a plea deal, he handed the feds Natalie's name. He painted her not as a gullible victim, but as the primary financial architect. He claimed she She was the one who registered the Delaware LLC. She was the one who forged the documents. She was the one who structured the cash. The authorities picked her up on a Monday night. She called me at 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was lying in bed in my new apartment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. When my phone buzzed with a collect call from a county detention center, I answered it out of morbid curiosity. "Ethan," she sobbed. The echo of the holding cell was unmistakable in the background. "He threw me under the bus. He told them it was my idea. I have nothing left. My accounts are empty." "What did you expect me to say?" I asked. My voice was completely hollow. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, just a profound, empty exhaustion. "I risked my whole future for him," she wailed, her voice cracking. "Yes, you certainly did," I replied. I hung up the phone. I opened my contact, found her number, and blocked it for the last time. I thought that was the end of it. The final period at the end of a very long, very ugly sentence. I went back to work. I bought furniture for my apartment. I started putting my life back together, one quiet, boring day at a time. 6 weeks later, I checked my mail. Mixed in with the supermarket flyers and utility bills was an unmarked envelope. No return address. Just my name and my new apartment number, printed on a perfectly aligned adhesive label. I opened it while standing in the kitchen. Inside was a single piece of paper, a bank statement. The logo at the top belonged to a regional credit union I had never set foot in. It was a joint checking account. It was opened under my name and Natalie. I looked at the date of inception. It was opened exactly 1 year before our wedding. I had never seen this account in my life. I had never signed the paperwork for it. For nearly a decade, she had maintained a shadow account right under my nose. My eyes scanned down the page to the summary block. The current balance read 0. There was only one line item in the transaction history. It was dated the exact week our divorce was finalized, right before the gavel came down and the court dispersed her settlement. It was an outgoing wire transfer, $210,000. I stared at the paper. $210,000. She hadn't just been funding Preston's gambling addiction. She had been siphoning money from our joint assets, skimming bonuses, hiding cash for almost a decade. Preston wasn't just a mistake. He was the perfect chaotic smokescreen. While everyone was looking at the credit card debt and the shattered windows on Pearl Street, she was quietly moving $250,000 out the back door. I looked at the receiving line on the wire transfer. It went to a name I didn't recognize. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there in the quiet of my kitchen, holding the paper, realizing that the woman I had married was never really there at all. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and dialed Hester.